Let's welcome Emma Rosen to the stage. Woo!
Okay, if I could start by asking you all a question. So put your hands up if you know exactly what it is that you want to do. Okay, I can see 4, 5, 5. Okay, put your hands up if you, despite being at university or even in your first job, still have absolutely no idea. Okay, that's what I was expecting, exactly. So I had absolutely no idea either, not a clue, not even a little bit of a clue. And I'm going to talk to you tonight exactly what I did about that problem. I'm going to leave about 10 minutes at the end for Q&A, so do save up some questions so we can get a discussion going. But essentially what I did was to spend an entire year focusing on my careers education for myself, and I spent a year working in 25 different jobs. So I'll start at the beginning of the story. I obviously went to school and sixth form, and I studied really hard, tried to get the best grades that I could, because I knew that I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I basically just figured, get the best grades I can and I'll worry about it later. Just give myself the absolute best chance that I can. I then went to university. I studied history and international relations at Exeter, and I still had no idea what I wanted to do. So I decided, again, to just work as hard as I could. I'll figure out the rest later. So I got to my second year of university. People started to think about doing internships, about doing work experience. There seemed to be a formula for getting a job after university. It seemed to be an internship, an extracurricular activity, and a 2-1. That was the formula you needed to get a job. So I set about getting an extracurricular activity, a work experience, and a 2-1. And that's exactly what I did. So I graduated with a good grade, and I realised I still didn't know what it was that I wanted to do. So I signed up for a master's degree, because I thought, I'll give myself an extra year, I'll buy some more time, which might sound familiar to some people here. It was my equivalent of a gap year. And on that year, I chose to specialise a little bit more in international relations, and that led me to discover about the civil service FAR stream, which is their equivalent of their grad scheme. And I applied to that halfway through my master's year, and I was very lucky that I managed to get on. I was relieved. It sounded about right. I always wanted to make a difference in whatever it was that I was doing in my career, and this sounded like a really, really good way to do that. And it meant that I wasn't going to enter unemployment the minute I graduated, which is something that I really, really wanted to avoid doing. So I finished my master's, walked straight into a job, and on paper, it was absolutely perfect. It was well paid, it was competitive, so getting on kind of felt like part of the challenge for me. There was a clear progression, a career progression structure, which I really liked as well. It was using my degrees in international relations. It was exactly where I should have been. And it was perfect. My parents were really proud of me. I was really proud of me. My friends kind of all being like, oh, Emma, yeah, I heard she's on civil service grad scheme. And like that was some really, really big achievement. And so I was really, really excited by all of that. And then it was September. I was 2 weeks in, and I thought, oh no, this is awful. What have I done? I absolutely hated it. And I couldn't figure out why. Why on earth wasn't this for me? This was everything I had ever dreamed of, everything I'd worked towards since I was about 10 and was doing the 11 plus. This was where I'd ended up, and in 2 weeks, I knew I hated it. I had no idea what to do about it. And it wasn't just the work that I was doing, it was the whole daily routine of office life. It was the idea that I would get up in the dark, and I'd get dressed and I'd head down to the station, I'd commute, my head would be in somebody else's armpit because I'm 5'1", really, all the time. I'd then sit at a desk, I wouldn't get up until 5 p.m, and at 5 p.m. it was dark and I'd come home again, and again, and again, and again. And I just couldn't get my head past that. But I thought, you know what, this is what the world of work is. The word work doesn't have any positive connotations for a reason. I just have to get used to this. Everybody else does it, so why on earth am I any different? I'm not any different. So I really couldn't understand what the problem was. I ticked all those boxes, and this was meant to be my reward, but yet for some reason, this job felt like a punishment, and I couldn't understand why. But like any good sort of grad, I gave it a full year. I kept sticking it out, despite on the second week knowing that it wasn't for me. After a year, it kind of got to the point where it was beginning to affect my mental health. I was really down a lot of the time. I'd stopped socialising and seeing my friends. And so I sat down on the couch in a bit of a fit of despair and ended up writing a long list of everything that I had ever dreamed of doing. Ever since I was a small child and someone said, what do you want to be when you grow up? That went on the list. And the same for age 8, age 10, 12, 14. I say it like I'm getting taller, but I kind of stopped at 12. And I just kept going. And surprise, surprise, I ended up with a list of 25 different jobs. And they were really, really diverse. And some were really serious, sort of mainstream professions. So things like journalism, marketing, police, really common things. Others were a bit less mainstream, but still fairly common. So I was working in charities, publishing, or photography. And then there was some slightly curveball ones, slightly more left field, like archaeology, and blogging, and being an explorer, whatever that means. And it occurred to me, could I really go and try all of these careers out? Could I actually go and spend a year working in 25 different jobs? I was just about to turn 24 at this point, and I kind of thought that 25 before 25 had quite a good ring to it. And I'd like to say that there was a much deeper reason for wanting to go and do it by the time I turned 25, but it just sounded quite nice. So I thought, you know what, it's now or never. And funnily enough, it sounds like it should be a really superficial reason for going to do something like that. But what it actually did was it gave me the nudge that I needed to do it by a deadline. It gave me a fixed time period to go away and try this project out. And it meant that I had a fixed time period to sell it to employers for afterwards as well. I could say, this is for a dedicated amount of time. This is not something that I've spent years and years doing and I can't just focus on anything. The whole point was I said, this is what I'm going to spend a year doing in lieu of something like a gap year. So, as I said, at this point, work was really beginning to affect my mental health. It was affecting my friendships, my relationships, and I realised I just couldn't go on. So, I quit. I handed in my notice, I walked into work, and I said, you know what, I can't do it anymore, and I'm not going to do it. I've given it my best shot, but work should not be impacting my mental health. It absolutely should not. So, I went away, and I built a website, and I learned how to build a website, which is something I had never done before. I had a long list of jobs, a really, really long list of jobs. And I went about getting the first 3 or 4 and trying to figure out how on earth I get those. And the day I quit my job, it was the most terrifying thing I have ever done, without a shadow of a doubt. But it was also the most liberating thing I've ever done. This weight that had been on my shoulders since I was a teenager, that I didn't even realise was there, all of a sudden just melted away. And I felt free. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was the one in control. I wasn't being pushed on and ticking these boxes that were laid out in front of me and those expectations that we all grow up with. All of a sudden, there was none of that there. There was just me and me trying to figure out what it was best for me to do. So I wanted to tell you about 2 jobs in particular that challenged my assumptions. So the first one is alpaca farming, which might not seem like I'm dressed to be an alpaca farmer, I admit. But I was always really interested in being a vet, but growing up I was told, oh, your grades aren't good enough for that, don't think about that. And so I'd followed the rules and I completely forgotten about it. But I thought, here's my chance, I might not be able to be a vet anymore and I might not fancy doing another 7 years at university or be able to afford it. But maybe this is a way that I can explore that a little bit, what it's like to work with animals. So, as a good millennial, I put out a tweet and I said, I would like to come and work on a farm. And within 10 minutes, an alpaca farmer from Cornwall said, yes, come and work with me. It's like, oh my God. So what I was kind of thinking was like a little cottage farm, somewhere near London, really easy to do. No, deepest, darkest Cornwall, and it was a woman farmer as well, which I really liked. I really liked the idea of breaking down those stereotypes. So instantly I said yes. And this was in the summer, so this was in, I think it was like August, maybe September, the weather was beautiful, and I said, fantastic, I'll get a tan at the same time. Great. And I called her up, and she said, no. If you want to be a farmer, you need to come in January. So if you like farming when it is -5 and it's raining, then you are meant to be a farmer. I was like, oh. But it was such good logic that I couldn't disagree with her. I just couldn't fight it. So I said, okay, fine, I'll do it. And so a few months later, January came around, this was maybe my 7th or my 8th placement by now. Got in the car, started driving down to Cornwall, and my phone signal and my data went down. So finally there was just a little X. That was it for the whole 2 weeks that I was there. There was no phone signal, and there was no Wi-Fi, and there was no nothing. And I turned up on a hillside, it was pitch black, it was chucking it down with rain, and I walked out straight into a puddle of mud. I was like, oh, what have I done? What have I done? And settled in. And the next day, pulled on some wellies, pulled on a big jacket, and went out with the farmer to see her herds and flocks of sheep and alpacas. And we did everything that I was expecting to do, was looking after and feeding the animals, doing animal husbandry, looking after their feet, all those sorts of things, and I loved it. I was out in the fresh air and the beautiful sunshine, because luckily it had stopped raining, thankfully. But then it got to lunchtime, and I was only looking forward to the afternoon, and then she said, I don't do farming in the afternoon, like it was some massive shock. She spent the other 50% of her time being a businesswoman. She was an entrepreneur, and she had several different businesses that came out of her farming. And so the most successful one was the most interesting one, I think. So she got her alpacas, sheared them, got the wool spun into yarn. The yarn was then made into luxury, high-end children's wear, and then sold on to Harrods and Selfridges. And she managed every single step of that process, from helping an alpaca give birth to negotiating with Harrods. Everything she did herself. So I'm talking about social media, website design, negotiating with a factory in Southeast Asia, designing children's wear. All of those skills she had to learn and figure out how to do herself. She had to be so forward-facing and entrepreneurial as a farmer. I had no idea that that was what it entailed to be a farmer in the 21st century. And it blew my mind. It blew every assumption that I had completely out of the water. Just remember some pictures from that. There we go. So I really So yeah, I had no idea that that was actually what was involved. I kind of thought I was going on for a bit of a jolly. It would be great to learn how to be a farmer, but what I actually learned was also how to be a businesswoman, how to be an entrepreneur, how to design social media campaigns, how to do supply chain management. All those different steps was actually what's involved in the 21st century, and I was so surprised. And it just showed what it means to actually go and try things out before you do them. So the next one I wanted to talk to you about was landscape gardening. And as you can see behind me, there is a before, during and after photo. I went along on a few months after farming. It was a wet and windy day in April, I think. And I was very, very near the after photo. And again, this was another one that completely broke down every assumption that I had about landscape gardening. Because in my mind, what a landscape gardener did is they went around and planted some plants and make them look pretty, worked with a few very, very rich clients and earned loads of money, and that was kind of it. And again, totally wrong, completely wrong. You have to do like a 3-year degree to start with. You're effectively a fully qualified architect, but for the outdoors. That is basically what you are. But then the landscape gardener that I was working with, she was a fully qualified builder, she was a fully qualified botanist, and so I had to memorize the Latin names of like 600 different types of plants, as well as understanding all the possible pests that they can face and how to treat them, where exactly they should be going, what sort of conditions that they like, as well as obviously how to care and maintain them, what they look like throughout all 4 seasons, and so making sure that you had different plants at different times of year. And then also you have to do CAD, so computer-aided design, to plan and design all of this stuff. So yeah, it completely blew my mind that actually you have to be such an all-rounder to do something that doesn't sound like it should be as complicated as it is. Because the biggest thing that she had to do was be a project manager. So to create that photo on that side, it's not just one person doing that. You have 50, 60 different suppliers coming in and doing tiny little bits of it, from the paving to the pool to building the shed at the back to the furniture supplier. All of those different steps you are coordinating to come together at exactly the right time to make sure that it all goes to plan to please your multi-millionaire clients, who will obviously have very, very high expectations. And again, this is just something that I had no idea this was actually like. But the minute you stop and think about it, you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense, of course that's how it is. But until you've gone and done it, you just don't realise that that's the case. So I wanted to talk next about what I actually took away from doing so many jobs. the things that I wish that I had known when I was sitting where you were, because it really wasn't that long ago. I'm only 26 now. So the biggest thing is the importance of doing multiple pieces of work experience in a diverse range of industries. And growing up, work experience was an important thing, but it was something that you did when you were 14 or 15, when you were doing your GCSEs. It wasn't something that you did as an adult, as a student, or as a recent grad. That's just not what you do. You might do an internship, yeah, absolutely, and you start in an actual job, but you don't do work experience. But what I've found is that work experience is the best way to learn about what it's actually like without the pressure of following on and ticking boxes. It showed that I didn't make assumptions about careers, and I didn't glamorise them either. It's so easy to glamorise certain careers, particularly the ones that are the flashy grad schemes with the really expensive marketing program, and you get brought in by them. They draw you in, and you want to achieve those things. You want to be competitive, and you want to prove that you're good enough. But actually, when you get there, you realise that might not be all that it was cracked up to be. And for some people, they are perfect, and I am not knocking grad schemes at all. But for some people, they actually aren't the right way to go, and that is okay too. It is absolutely okay to not want to follow that path. So what work experience does is it allows you to educate yourself. And yes, you will have hundreds, hopefully, of different influences from talking to different people, but ultimately, you're the one that's got to go away and do that. And you've got to do it every single day. And if you aren't happy doing it, then quite frankly, what's the point? You've got to enjoy what you do. And yes, we all need a baseline to live and pay rent and transport and food and all of that. I absolutely accept all of that. But ultimately, if you aren't enjoying what you're doing each day, then whose life are you really living? And I guess that was kind of the point of the 25 before 25 concept. It was learning by doing, and getting as many of those different pieces of work experience as I possibly could. But then the next big question that I often get asked, which is very valid, is how on earth do you go about getting so many different jobs? Most of us just struggle to get one. So, main point. So how, and I can answer that in one word, and that is networking. It is telling as many different people as you possibly can what it is that you want to do, because you never know who knows someone. So your initial circle is quite easy. It's parents, friends, friends of parents, parents' friends, going to school, university, alumni, and most universities have alumni networks that are specifically for networking, so you just need to know to ask the right question. And networking events like this one. So I know you guys have got some employers coming tomorrow. Go and talk to them, go and ask for a business card, go and ask to take them out for coffee. Like, those connections are absolutely crucial. And because you never know who knows someone, it's worth telling absolutely everyone. So I've gone to my hairdresser and I've said, oh, I'm really interested in X, Y, Z. And they've said, oh, funny you should say that. My boyfriend's sister's mum does that exact thing. I'll put you in touch, don't worry. And lo and behold, you are put in touch and you go out for a coffee. And you had no idea that that connection existed until you make that effort to go and ask and to go and talk about it. And one of the things that I definitely found on that project was that people are really generous with their time, really unexpectedly so. I thought the biggest challenge for me would be getting all those 25 jobs. And it actually wasn't. It was actually really easy. I was amazed how easy it was to do. I think I got the first 5 in the space of 4 days, just by asking. And they were weird ones as well. Like, there was, I'll talk about it later if you ask in the Q&A, there was, archaeology was in Transylvania, and I got that in literally a day. Exactly, like, who would have thought? So yeah, people are very generous with their time, because when you ask somebody for their advice, what you're sort of doing in a kind of unusual way, backhanded way, is you're flattering them. You're saying, I really admire what you do, I'd love to learn from you, please let me spend some time with you, let me take you out, let me buy you a coffee. Coffee only costs £2, £2.50. You can afford £2 to go and take someone out to flatter them and ask them those questions. What you need to do is you need to build up long-term relationships. This isn't an immediate, instant relationship that you're going to take, all you do is take from. You need to ask them out for a coffee, that's it, that's all you're doing. But then, maybe a little bit after that, you say, well, maybe I could come and just follow you around for a day or two. Just a day, maybe 2. Maybe you'll use your annual leave if you're not enjoying the job that you're currently in, so go and do that. Then after that, if you really like that, maybe then you say, oh, maybe I could do a little internship, just for a week, just to see. And then you're building up, step by step, relationships that develop into longer term, maybe mentorships with people that you meet there. And then when you get into that work experience placement, you're not just sitting there doing some admin, you're also talking to the person the left of you into the person to the right of you and saying, can I take you for a coffee downstairs? I'd quite like to learn about what it is that you do. Oh, do you know anybody else that does X, Y, Z? And you're just constantly making connections, you're constantly meeting people and talking to people because you're trying to get the widest range of perspectives as you possibly can. And you're not just asking about the good things, and this is really important. You're asking about the bad things too. You want to know what a good day looks like, but you also want to know what the worst day looks like. Because when you're in a job, it's never just the good days. You have the good with the bad. There's no such thing as a Prince Charming job. Every job will have its bad sides to it, and that's okay, but you just need to figure out what they are before you get there, so that you know whether you're okay with that or not. So some of the ways that I got some of these networking kind of contacts was obviously talking to others, but it's also through LinkedIn, which is obviously a professional networking website. So what you can do, so you've got your perfected, beautiful, shiny LinkedIn profile. You can then upgrade your profile for free for a month to a premium account, and through that you can contact anyone you want on LinkedIn. You can send them a message, and then you can immediately downgrade after a month and you pay nothing, but don't tell them that. So what you want to do is you want to do all your research first. You have a long list, 20, 30, 40 people, ready to go. You've got your draft cover letter. Obviously they've got your CV because they've got your LinkedIn. You want to upgrade it, and then you want to send as many people as you can whose careers that you admire a message and say, I really like what you do, can I take you out for a coffee? That's all you're asking, but you're literally going to try and send 10, 20, 30 even per work experience placement you're interested in, because it is a numbers game, and that is okay. You've got to expect to be rejected, you've got to expect to never hear again. So in some industries, so in TV production for example, I must have sent upwards of 60, because that's how the industry works. But in some, like in property development, I sent 1. And within 2 hours, I had the placement sorted. So they do really, really vary. I found that working for very small companies, startups, are much, much easier because you don't have bureaucracy, you don't have HR departments to kind of go through. You've just got 2 guys sitting in an office and they go, yeah, all right, that's kind of it. Which was the property development placement. It was the CEO replied within 2 hours and was like, yeah, sounds good. That was that. So they're much, much easier to do because they just don't worry about the technicalities of everything. Some of the other placements I got through social media, as I said. Alpaca farming was through Twitter, but I got plenty of others through Facebook groups. So there are plenty of professional networking groups on Facebook if you know where to look, which is something that I knew nothing about. So I belong to plenty of the more creative ones, but they exist for plenty of other industries. And what they do is it's a free way for employers to advertise jobs, but it's also places where people help each other and network with each other. So you can absolutely post on there and say, can I take somebody out for coffee? I'd like to learn more about this really specific thing. And I've done it time and time again, and people will always say, yes, absolutely, that sounds great. But I know that you guys have more detail on networking tomorrow, so I won't go through that in too much detail. Because the last big point I wanted to talk to you about was something that sounds remarkably simple, but that absolutely blew my mind when I realised it was the case. And that's the concept that you do not just have to choose one. You can have what's called a portfolio career, which is what I do now, and that's multiple jobs in multiple industries at the same time, through contract work, through freelance work, part-time, and you just don't need to choose, which I never realised. Kind of growing up, you kind of asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? And you were expected to give one answer, and that again applies all the way throughout education. But in 2018, that is no longer true. And that is in a range of industries. That's not just in kind of the arts or in the media. I have friends that are doctors that work on locum shifts 3 days a week, and 2 days a week they design jewellery and sell it on Etsy. Those do not sound like they should go together. I have another friend who works for Shell, and he does student recruitment, but he has a beehive. And he also makes honey in his back garden, somewhere in the home counties, and every day he comes up into the oil and gas industry. And those things don't sound like they should go together at all. But in 2018, because of the internet, they do, and they can, and you absolutely do not need to compromise, and don't let anybody tell you that you should. I think it's really important to realise that you can be a wide achiever as well, or instead of being a high achiever. I was not a high achiever. There were some things that, quite frankly, I was awful at. I'm very, very, very dyslexic. I cannot do numbers at all. I have 2 parents that are accountants. I can't do it, just can't do it. But words, I'm quite good at. And so I can apply my skills in words and in speaking across several different industries at the same time. So rather than specialising in one sort of industry or sector, I'm specialising in a specific skill set. And that skill set I'm applying much more widely across many, many different sectors, which is something that I just didn't realise I could do. So you can approach an employer and you have the legal right to ask for flexible working, and they have to give you basically a damn good reason why not, or you can take them to court. So most requests for flexible working are accepted these days because it is a legal requirement that you can go away and ask for that. So it's becoming an increasingly popular trend because as we move towards the future, we're going to see an increasingly agile workforce, and that's a word that you're going to hear more and more of. And actually being able to apply a skill set across multiple industries means that you're going to be able to learn far faster. You're going to be able to be far more flexible and adaptable to new environments. And as certain industries go down and other industries increase, that's something that's going to be really, really important in keeping your skill set up to date and making sure that you have a job when you're still in your 60s, because we're going to be working until we're well over 70, sadly. And it also means that you can work remotely. So earlier this year, in March this year, I decided to go and spend a month working in Bali, of all places. I had 4 different jobs at the time. I went around and asked 4 different bosses, can I go and work in this co-working space, so in a space for freelancers, with very good Wi-Fi, in Bali for a month. And every single one turned around and said, yes, yeah, go on then, let's give it a go. And I worked out that it was cheaper, quite substantially cheaper, for me to get on a plane, go to Bali, pay my rent there, pay for food there, and then fly home than it was to stay in London for a month. So I'm going to Bali. Obviously I'm going to Bali. So I did. I flew off, and the Wi-Fi in my co-working space was stronger than my flat in London. I kid you not. And I worked from a swimming pool with a little like solid cushion thing on the side, and my laptop on that, and I sat in the swimming pool working every single day for a month. Literally, that is exactly what I did. And I spent my weekends going and exploring Indonesia. Because I could, and it was cheaper to do that than it was to live here and do it here. So kind of having a portfolio career doesn't necessarily mean that it's something that you just do because you want to start a family, for example, and you have young children. It's something that you can absolutely do in your 20s to try and think outside the blocks and try and actually make yourself more employable and have more and more opportunities. So the last point I want to talk to you about was what I do now. So it's kind of a year, pretty much, and a couple of months on from finishing the 25 Before 25 project. And I now work as a speaker, which is why I'm here talking to you. I go to schools, universities, speak to recent grads about what I do and how I can try and help others to think outside the box a little bit with their careers and their careers education. I'm an author, so I've got a book coming out in January, which is really exciting, and I can give a whole other talk on how on earth you go about getting into publishing. I've managed to combine travel with writing, so I get paid to travel, basically, and write about it. So I've just got back from working in the Himalayas and climbing a mountain, working with an expedition company. So I pitched to this company and said, can I write some articles for you and come along on your trip? And they said, yeah, go on then. Great. So yeah, I spent 2 weeks climbing a mountain in the Himalayas. Before that, I was working with an endurance swimmer who's also the UN patron for the oceans, and who swam from Land's End to Dover over 2 months. So I spent 2 months this summer living on a boat. Won't do that again. And I was the ghostwriter, so I did all his social media. I wrote a blog that had 2 million hits a day, which was terrifying when I first figured that out. And wrote pieces for press. And obviously I was paid to do it. And so had basically a massive adventure swimming with dolphins along the English coast all summer. Which was awesome. And then I also am an editor for a student magazine. So what I'm doing, or what I'm trying to do, is to take the skill set, which for me is writing, and applying it across multiple industries, and really creating my own portfolio career. So what I'd like to do now is have a Q&A and a bit of discussion. I've got the list of all the 25 jobs up there. If you want to ask about any specific ones, feel free. Or if you want to go completely off track and ask about anything else, please feel free to. So we've got a little bit of time for questions. So thank you very much.
Guys, give it a round of applause. It's not over yet. I'm giving you time for We're going to do some questions now. You were amazing. The first one was yes, and hands are right up straight away. Love it. I'm running, working off my curry.
Hi. Did you get paid for these jobs, or were you just doing volunteering?
So there was a mixture. Virtually all of them covered my expenses, but yes, some did pay. So I was a movie extra, for example, and that paid quite well, to be honest, which was great. But then I ended up being a freelancer for quite a few of the companies who kind of employed me very part-time to stay on. So I ended up working and earning through those. And so in the end, I kind of totted it all up. And then ended up, I didn't earn anything, but I was cost neutral, so I didn't make a loss. And I kind of decided that, you know what, I was 24, when I'm 70, I'm not going to miss a year's salary at the end of the day. As long as I could afford to live and kind of make ends meet. For me, that was worthwhile. That was a worthwhile investment to make. And now, the portfolio career that I have, I earn more than I did working on my grad scheme. So for me, that was like, phew. Okay.
God, amazing. Any more questions? Yes, round of applause for that. Well done. Any more questions, guys? Yeah, good.
What was a tech startup company like?
So it was an educational tech startup based quite randomly in the Brecon Beacons in Wales. And they found me, amazingly, on LinkedIn and said, we're starting out, we really want somebody to come and write loads and loads of articles for our website. It was also a graduate recruitment website. And so I went down to Brecon Beacons and spent a couple of weeks working with them there and learning how you go about creating an app, which I'm sure the lovely people at Debut Careers can also tell you about, and how working for a startup works, and how working with actually a really small team really suited me and who I am. One of the things that this year taught me is that I'm not so good at structure. I'm not so good at being in a really strictly hierarchical organisation. So the civil service is roughly 440,000 people strong. I then went to working with two. And for me, that work felt better. It suited who I was in a much better way. I loved that it meant that you have to do a bit of everything. There's not just, yes, you have a certain job role, but actually when there's a crisis, you just have to muck in. Everyone does a little bit of everything. But I saw that as a fantastic learning opportunity. It meant that I got to understand a business in a much more holistic sense that I could never get an insight into if I was doing a really specialised role in a large organisation.
Any more questions? Yes?
You said that your skill was writing. How did you figure out what your skill is? Because I think for me personally, it's sometimes hard to pinpoint what you're really good at.
Yeah, so I didn't really realise that it was writing at all, to be honest, until I started doing this project. I started blogging about it because I kind of wanted to keep track of it. I started speaking to friends and realising that actually I was not the only person experiencing this massive kind of quarter-life crisis. And so I wanted to share my experiences. And people quite liked what I was writing. And so it was kind of from external validation that I realised maybe I'm not that bad at this. I mean, it was something that I'd always been interested in personally. So it was something that I kind of had my eye on. But growing up, you'll kind of think being a writer, that's not a real job. It fit very much into that category. So I kind of wrote it off in the back of my head. And it was only doing this project that I really realised that actually this is something that I really enjoy and that I seem to be quite good at and I quite like to do professionally. So in answer to your question, I guess I think about maybe your hobbies. What do you enjoy doing? What would you do even if you weren't paid to do it? What sorts of things would you be drawing on? And like think about your hobbies, try and break those down into skills, whether that's teamwork or whether it's actually more leadership or whether, do you know what I mean? Those kind of very clear-cut employability skills, trying to figure out how you break down the things that you do in your spare time into those kind of categories and then see what you're left with. And then try and pursue those a little bit more in your spare time and see actually can I do more and more and more of this. So writing is obviously quite an easy one because anyone can set up a blog and kind of get going with it. But yeah, that would be my advice.
Wonderful question, absolutely fantastic answer. Any more questions, guys? Maybe time for one more? Yes, so I'm coming. Definitely working off that curry. Amazing.
Awesome, thank you. So, looking at the list, what kind of got you into international security and kind of what did that entail?
So, as I studied international relations at university, there was quite a lot of crossover. My master's had already specialised in international security. So it was an area that I was already interested in. It stemmed from doing an internship in my second year at university. Went and worked for an MP who had quite an international focus. And it was literally like a week's work experience. And it kind of made me realise that you can do history but as it's happening. Which might sound really silly, but that wasn't a subject at school. So I kind of hadn't really realised that that was something I could do. And so the interest stemmed from there. And then this internship was definitely one of those ones that you would never know existed until you did it. So it was a security consultancy, really, really small company, and they owned some woods on a country estate in Suffolk, I think it was. And what they do is they run fully immersive crisis simulations for 5 days in the woods for Foreign Office staff, for journalists, or for people that work in oil and gas, for example, so people that work in really dangerous places around the world. And they simulate everything going wrong. So there being a plane crash or the country breaking out into civil war, and the employees from companies or government departments or newspapers have to spend 5 days living in that situation and trying to figure out what the hell to do. And they hire like 50 actors, there's fireball pyrotechnics going off everywhere, fake plane crashes. I mean, it was really, really believable. So the simulation that I was working on was kind of civil unrest in a Russian-style country that wasn't named. So it was quite believable, and they hired literally 50 different Russian actors, gave them fake guns. They spoke Russian and they would pretend to be part of militias. And then they had actors that were British nationals who got caught up in the crossfire. They set up a field hospital where they had people with fake blood like spewing out of like no arms, and it was so believable, I cannot even tell you. And it was such a niche job that I had never ever known existed. And my careers advisor at school and uni would never have known existed until I went and found out about all these different things. And you know, when you start down a path, you never really know where it's going to lead you. And that was definitely one of those cases. And I got to organise that for 5 days and to realise what happens behind the scenes. And I also got to play acting as well, which was really fun. I played a journalist, so it was great.